So, burnout is a relentless companion of modern life and often creeps into our existence without warning. But what if the stories that echo within the corridors of our mind play a pivotal role in determining whether burnout takes root or withers away? In this episode, we're going to unravel the thread of storytelling and self talk, exploring how the narratives we construct shape our experiences of stress, exhaustion, and resilience. From the tales of our self identity to the scripts we follow in pursuit of perfection, we're going to break down the intricate dance between storytelling and burnout. Our internal narrative can become a powerful ally or a silent saboteur in the face of all the challenges that we face at work and in life. Can the stories we tell ourselves act as a shield against burnout, or do they unwittingly usher it in? Today, we're lucky to be joined by special guest Sally Zimney, an award-winning and TEDx speaker and founder of Be Moved with Sally Z, a company focused on helping people step from the sideline to the spotlight and become the speakers they want to be. She's also excited to release her first book in February 2024, Speaking Story, using the magic of storytelling to make your mark, pitch your ideas, and ignite meaningful change. Hi, everybody. My name's Jeff. I'm a SME and also a coach who works with people in the construction industry.
Hey everyone, I'm Rochelle. I'm a proposal management consultant in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry.
And this
is Burnout Banter.
Before we jump into today's podcast, remember to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen so that you can stay up to date with the latest banter. Welcome.
Yay! Hi, Jeff. Hi, Rochelle.
How's it going?
Hey, Sally.
I mean, how is it going? All day today, I've been thinking about burnout in preparation for this conversation. And honestly, I'm like, this is sort of ironic because I'm feeling kind of burnt out right now. So this would be perfect. This is great.
Well, from what I know about you, you've had a lot going on over the past couple of months. So that's
yeah.
surprising.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was earned. I've earned it.
Well, do you mind just telling everybody a little bit about yourself and maybe about your book as well?
Yeah. So Jeff introduced me a little bit, but a lot of people online especially call me Sally Z. And I am a speaker and a speaker coach. So for the last 25 years or so, I have been really empowering people to step out front and use their voice, their authentic voice, so that they can move their audience. So really what I work with all kinds of different people, leaders from all different industries. And my goal is to help people find their more clear, courageous voice. And so, especially for the last few years, that has revolved around the idea of stories and storytelling. And I think it's such an important element to, even if you don't consider yourself a speaker, and I always have to say that because a lot of people just opt out immediately. They're like, speaking, no, I don't wanna, nope, I don't do that. It's terrifying. It's not for me. But I really think of speaking as this really big umbrella, and it's truly just all the ways in which you can amplify and leverage your voice. And you're talking to a lot of leaders right now. We all are. And so leadership and speaking go hand in hand. And so it's really an important, not just professional development idea, but also personal development. And, it can really make a big difference in the way in which you lead. And, yeah, so that's what I get to do. And I love it. It's totally my passion. Yeah, so
It'd be,
I don't know. How's that?
Yeah,
That was a lot.
It would be interesting to track. You said, right, if you're not a speaker, I would guess if we tracked how much time we spend speaking every day,
Right.
talking to other people,
Yeah.
to get our way in things that we're trying to accomplish, or, as an engineer, we have to explain things to our clients in simple ways. And oftentimes that involves breaking down really complex things into stories or things that people can understand. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. I kind of think of it as, I just wrote a book, but have I really embraced the idea that I'm an author yet? It's like, no, I don't know. I guess I technically am an author. And I think speaking is very similar. Like whatever your role is, you are probably doing some speaking. You might not identify fully as a speaker, but you are speaking. And so, wrapping our heads around ways that we can do it better so that we can have a bigger impact on the people that we are speaking to, whoever that is, it's worth your time. So don't run away, is what I'm saying. Stay with us.
I know
Embrace the
Rochelle
fear
can
for
identify.
sure.
You can identify with not wanting to be a speaker, right?
I could once upon a time, and now I have just accepted it.
Okay.
Look at you. Okay. So, Rochelle, like, what helped you accept it? I'm just curious. I'm asking the questions now.
No, I love this flip the script. I just kept getting like thrust into these opportunities. I'm like, I can't pass that up. I
Yeah.
absolutely like would love to talk about burnout with anybody who will listen.
Yeah.
So I was just doing my calendar actually for the next 3 months, and I have 9 presentations
What's
between
up?
like now and March. And I'm
Awesome.
like, this, what is my life? Like that would have terrified me 3 years
Yeah.
ago before Jeff and I did our first conference. And like
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, it's Wednesday. I have a webinar. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Yep. So there's a need or a message that you feel passionate enough about, it's overcoming your fear.
Exactly.
Or
Exactly.
just
I have to
like,
be excited about what I'm talking about, or I'm gonna go
yeah,
crawl back in my little hole and say no. Thank
I
you.
love it. I love it. Good for you.
I
Good for you
think one thing
because
that, yeah, one thing that both of us have had to learn though too is to like build recovery time in because we're both a little more introverted, and so it's that type of activity exhausts both of us, and so we've learned to like schedule in some recovery on the
yeah,
backside of something like that
So
love
that we
it
don't
for
burn
sure.
out.
Yeah.
so that we
I'm
don't burn
still
out.
learning
Yeah.
that. I am still learning that. And a lot of people think speaking is just for extroverts, or, you have to have some sort of, professional performance background of some kind or whatever. And it's really, truly not true. It's all accessible. It's all learnable if you're willing to take the risk and give it a go. And so the best way to do that is to have something on the calendar, right? To have a request come in, and then you're like, oh, okay, I guess I'm doing this thing. I'm willing to, this is important enough that I'm willing to kind of put fear in the back seat for a little bit and
Yeah.
put myself out there. Rock
So
on.
you mentioned you're struggling with burnout a little bit,
Yeah.
potentially. What's been your experience with it in the past or currently?
Yeah. I I am wildly resilient, and you all don't know me, and we've never been in the same room together, but I'm a pretty high energy person. And this is weird for me. This is unusual for me to get to such a place where I'm like, no, I just don't feel like it. I just am not feeling the go, go, go jazz. And, as an Enneagram 7 and ENFP and like all of the things, all of the leadership, identities, I am normally just all about January. It's a start. Let's go. Who's excited? I've got big visions, big dreams. And I think my dreams and goals and work and results were so good last year, and they were big, and I did it. And I just have not come out of the much needed, okay, let's just wrap this in a bow and put it to rest for a little bit. So I'm still in sort of like quiet mode, cocooned. I feel like I'm cocooning right now. And if I didn't have things on my calendar, I would be just chilling. And that is very weird for me. Very weird.
But
So,
that's I think in order for us to deal with and not get to the point where burnout just becomes this all-encompassing thing, that's really important is to rest, to find time to do that. Even in our first episode, Rochelle and I were talking about our intentions for the new year, and my word was grind. And then she was asking me like, what am I doing to, kind of goals that I've set? And every single one was like, okay, I'm going to grind, but I'm also going to rest.
okay.
So it had like this.
The word grind, when Jeff threw it out there, like gave me burnout concerns. Cause I'm just
Yeah.
like, I'm picturing Jeff just like saying yes to everything and going. And then he's like, no, I'm going to like meditate and I'm going to focus and I'm going to like set boundaries. I'm like, that's not traditional
That's not
grinding.
grind. Yeah, I love it. I love it. It's Jeff's version of
It's Jeff's
grinding. That's
version of
fantastic.
grinding, which everybody
Uh,
should adopt.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's so ironic because I launched a conference in December, and my keynote at the conference was about the importance of doing despite your fears. Basically, like not getting stuck in the stories that we tell ourselves around these big ideas. And I really believe wholeheartedly in it. And literally, that was my whole year, is it was just like, take the plunge, go do, it was so much. It was, I don't believe in hustling until you're, especially if your heart isn't in it. But I also work with so many people who want to do things, but their fears hold them back, which is different. That's different than what we're talking about here. But I just think it's so ironic that right now I'm just like, no, I don't want to do. No, mm-mm. Nope, no more doing. What are your goals for this year? I don't know. I'm just gonna chill. That's what I want to do in 2024.
I fully support this. That's one of my
Okay.
intentions for 2024. But two things that are really interesting in what you just said, I think, is one, the distinction between saying yes to things that you're passionate about versus saying yes to things that you think you need to, because I
Yeah.
think those lead to different levels of burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And you said something else, and I have forgotten what it was, but I'm curious about that specifically, like,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to loop it back to storytelling. So I'm wondering if there is like the story of 2023 and how you were saying yes to things and how that led to this chillin' phase
Yeah.
of 2024.
Yeah. I mean, there's a pretty direct correlation, I think. So when I think of storytelling, to me, there's two phases of this. Like, really, before you can tell stories to other people, before you can have the clarity and the wisdom and the strength to do that internally for yourself, to go and speak stories to other people, we really have to start with the stories that we tell ourselves. So all of the stories of 2023 for me was very much about go, 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 do, do, do. And I'm still trying to figure out what the story is for myself in 2024. I know that it's a very different energy. And so I'm not ready yet to go out and tell stories to other people. So I've been really quiet on social media. I'm like, I don't really have the internal perspective yet about what's happening in order for me to do that. So I'm guessing from your point of view as burnout experts, like there's some internal introspection that is required in order to really even make sense of it for ourselves, to move through and decipher for ourselves. Is this fear? Is this I need to rest right now? Like, what is the thing that's holding me back? And being able to decipher that is so critical to know if you just need to push yourself, or how you want to make sense of that for other people. So we're having a very meta conversation because I speak about speaking, and I myself am having the very experience that I'm talking to my speakers about and my audience about all the time. So it's a
Well, I
little
think,
circular, but
yeah, no, I think when you talk about fear, right? Most of us don't rest because we're afraid of what will happen if we do. Like,
mhm,
we do live in this hustle culture and we are supposed to grind. And, I even see people on projects, right, where they've been working really hard for a couple of months getting work out the door, and then they have a break, and their immediate thought goes to, are they going to lay me off? I need to find something to do. Instead of like celebrating the fact that they just went through this big push and then just relaxing for a little bit, we get so worked up in the fear of what's going to happen if I do this
yeah,
that
yeah,
we talk ourselves out of it. And that's when burnout shows up.
yeah. Well, my husband and I just had this is a vulnerable thing to admit, just a conversation about this, like, is this burnout? What's happening? Why I just don't want to do anything right now. And he was like, do you think maybe there's some work, there's an element of workaholism that is connected to this? And I was like, probably. There is probably an element of that where I don't even know what to do with myself without a big goal, without a big ambitious, like, what's the next thing? I'm sort of like, okay, I don't know.
Well,
Who am I? Who am I
workaholism,
right now?
I mean, workaholism is a fear response too, where we drive ourselves to overwork because we don't like what we're thinking about ourselves or what other people are going to think about us if we're taking it easy.
Wow.
Guilty.
Jeff. Guilty. Guilty.
I do. I'm serious. I realize that like I'm not comfortable being alone with myself. And so I just like keep layering on activities like, oh yes, I'll serve on this board. And yes, I will also
Mm,
commit to this, this, and this. And oh, I'm running a business on top of that. And
mm,
it's like Jeff said, it was a fear response of just like being either perceived as lazy because of downtime, which is
mm,
ridiculous, or
mm,
having to be alone with myself and my thoughts, I guess. I'm not
mm.
really sure. But it
Yeah.
was, every time I go into the cocoon phase of burnout, the way I try to snap myself out of it has historically been by finding a new project, finding a new
Mm, yeah.
driver, which
Yeah.
just leads to more burnout.
Well, that's exactly what I'm trying to avoid is I'm about to go into a big business retreat with my coach. And I'm like, I do not want to fill this unknown future, like what 2024 looks like. I don't want to put a bunch of big stuff on there. So I don't really know what this looks like what wow and energy and joy and excitement for my work looks like without a big goal.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Whoa.
excited to see what it's going to look like for you. You're gonna have to let us know. Come
Oh
back.
my gosh. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, part of it, just to loop it back really specifically, part of it is talking a lot more about storytelling. And I actually really love the energy of that because the book is done. It's written, like the hard work of that is done. And now I just get to have conversations with people about it. And to me, what's beautiful about storytelling is it is a level of personal vulnerability. It's a question of how much of yourself are you willing to share with the people that you're talking about in a way that serves them. I mean, it's not just about like opening yourself up and sharing absolutely whatever you want and whatever feels good to you in the moment. It's about what you share serving other people. And yet most of us, especially in the professional context, are not willing to go to a space where we're leaning into our personal stories and leveraging them to connect with and offer insights to the people that we're talking with and about. So I am excited about talking about that.
And is that what makes them so powerful, do you think, is the connection that it creates with other people?
Yeah, that's exactly it, Jeff, because storytelling turns an abstract idea and gives it legs and arms and a heart and dialogue, and it's moving around in the world. And so it helps us make sense of sometimes challenging ideas. It gives context to and gray and complexity to what some people might see an idea. Let's say you're talking about something a little controversial or something where your audience already has a strong opinion about, and you're trying to shift their thinking in some way. Well, you're going to really need to lean on stories to do that, because if you do that, it will help people because of the way stories are structured. We feel the story before we're thinking about the point of the story, the answer to the story, and what you really want to say with the story. And as soon as we feel it first, it opens us physiologically in our brain up to thinking potentially differently about something. So it is such a powerful, persuasive tool. And we want to yield that and wield that carefully, but it is really, every leader should have some stories in their back pocket. And whenever you're introducing an idea or connecting with a new audience or really up in front of people in any way, If you don't have a story in that message yet, there's more that you can do with that message. It can connect deeper. It can offer more powerful insights and changes and transformations if you use story.
Okay.
I think this is so powerful for the industry, the architecture construction industry, because in shorthand, we get stuck in this like rut of, well, we've done it this way for how many years? Like it's fine, we'll just keep going.
Yeah.
But we're in this kind of pivotal era where there's a lot of changes coming to our industry. There's a lot of scary changes. As a marketer, like AI is coming at me, and I'm terrified, right?
Mhm.
So coming up with that story of who I am and why I should stay in this organization is really important to me. But I feel like, and we've danced around the subject of fear a lot. It takes a lot of courage to tell
Mhm.
your story and to challenge that status quo. So do you have any advice for people who aren't feeling like they're up to that challenge but need to?
Yeah.
Or want to. I would say not need to, want to.
Want to. I
Yeah.
would say need to. We need to change.
There might be some need in there too. And it may start as a need, but I would love to, based on this conversation, shift people into a place of more want to around this. Because first of all, a lot of people think that fear negates you from leaning into this. Okay, I'm afraid, this is scary, so that means I shouldn't do that, or I shouldn't share this story, or that I don't belong in this leadership position. I don't have anything of value to say. And there's a lot of those self stories that keep us from really offering up your point of view, your insight, your experiences that might be really needed to the people who you're talking to. So, Rochelle, we were talking about how you felt this like pull out front because you feel really passionate about the message. So if we can get to a place where we're like, okay, I believe this idea. This is needed. This message is needed for this audience. And let that really lead you out front. And just for the time being, in that moment, ignore your fear. That fear doesn't get to decide whether or not you're going to do it, because fear is truly just part of it. Everybody, everybody is afraid if they're about to do something that is important or that they care about. I don't care how experienced you are. I've worked with professionals who are making a butt ton of money. Speaking butt ton, I don't know where that phrase came from, but they're doing really well professionally speaking, and they are still, when they face a new audience or get to a new context, or they are whatever, for whatever reason, their fear is bubbling up for them again, and they know, okay, this just means I'm pushing to the next level, and this is new for me, but I trust myself, or I believe in what I'm doing so much that I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, so there is a little bit of like show up anyway kind of moment for this.
I do think
And
one point on this too is you can disprove what fear is telling you about yourself or what you think
yeah,
it's telling you about other people, right? If we recognize what that thing is, we can disprove it, and that allows us to take the step forward too.
totally. And that's why the more reps you put in, the faster you can get to a place of self-trust, because the fear thought is going to crop up. You're like, I shouldn't do this. This is bad. This is a bad idea. I'm going to fail. I'm going to look stupid, or nobody cares, or whatever. All of the things that we tell ourselves in those moments. But if you can look back and say, oh, I always feel this way. Last time I did, it went fine. It's going to go fine this time. I can do it. I can move through it. It'll be fine. It'll be fine, even though, and we just sort of shush that voice for the time being. We just don't let it hold us back. So,
Or even if it goes terribly, I'm going to be fine.
yeah, I will survive this. This is survivable. I will be okay. Because truly, and I'm sure you all know this, but the physiological response is your body is trying to protect you. Your body truly thinks you're in danger. You're not in danger. But we can't totally convince ourselves of that just by the words that we replace or say in our head. We convince ourselves by doing and surviving. You're like, oh, okay, I'm okay. I'm okay. I can do this. I'll be all right. But Rochelle, you brought up AI, and like
Yes.
this is part of the reason why I think storytelling is so important, because you know people can find that you can lean into the AI tools, you can get answers to things, you can get lists of things, you can get all of the curated you know AI smart stuff landing in your inbox or on your desktop for free right now, right? Storytelling will always be the most human thing that you can do when you are standing up and sharing information with other people. Because even if AI hands you a script of a story to tell, because it's coming out of a human body, because it's in your voice, because you're pulling from your own experiences and you are thinking about things that are personal and truly authentic only to you and the whole people of the world and on this planet, that's what makes it magical and interesting and engages people and pulls them in. And so I think as AI increasingly becomes something that we lean on in some ways, we're going to crave the authenticity of storytelling more and more and more. And so any leader who wants to compel and engage and onboard people to an idea or a new whatever phase of business, or just in a meeting, we just want to pull their attention, and you've got to be able to lean into stories to do that.
I love that you've said this, because that's kind of the number one thing I'm telling people is like, you can't replace the human with the AI, right? Because of our lived experiences, and AI doesn't have a lived experience.
Right.
And we can't lose that part of our voice. But it is still scary. That fear is still there until we convince ourselves that it's not. So
or we just
the only way it's not is by continuing to take risks and get outside your comfort zone, and then get comfortable and the fear goes away. But that's
I mean, at this point in my career, I recognize the fear and I can flip it into excitement pretty quickly. But that's because I've been doing this for 25 years. So I will still feel that fear. Like I get nervous before everything. I'm like, "Ooh, okay." But I can flip that by, instead of saying this is, I'm nervous, this is going to be terrible, I'm so scared, I can flip that pretty quickly too, and believe myself when I say, I'm really excited. I can't wait to do this for them. This is going to be great. Right. And physiologically, nothing's different. I'm telling myself a slightly different story about it. And so, but the only reason I can do that is because I've done it again and again and again. We just got to get your reps in.
Yeah, I was listening to an interview with an old country singer, and it was from a band in the 80s, and I can't remember the name of the band, but his first gig, like he didn't play in bands or anything, he got kind of discovered. Their band was opening for Alabama in front of 15,000 people. And he had never performed before. And, the first time he's throwing up backstage, and he said it took him like almost a year of this touring and performing at that level to finally get comfortable with doing it. But he did. He had to overcome that fear, right? That first time, and throw up and walk out there and do it anyways.
Oh my gosh.
But not an experience that most people have, right? Where you're
not many people.
15,000 people.
That's your first foray, an arena performance. Dang, good. That is awesome. I spent years out talking to kids and like touring around to schools, and it was that arena performance, but of course not an arena. It was a school gym, but it was 150 ninth graders every day. That is its own level of fear.
Yeah, that sounds even more terrifying.
Yeah, that was way worse.
And at first, it was really scary, but every day I was giving one or two talks every day for years. And so it was a really powerful learning curve. And I got to watch how storytelling changed the way people engaged with ideas through that. People who have a really high bar are like, you're dumb. I'm not interested in what you have to say. You sound like my mom. Like there's a lot we had to work against. Because, we're talking about these ideas that your parents are probably talking to you about all the time. And
Yeah.
story was the way that people considered it, opened up to the idea and really understood it in powerful, meaningful ways. And it was so fun to do it over and over and over again as like a test phase. Like, okay, how did this work here? Interesting. Today it went a little bit differently. I wonder why. It's live theater.
It's a great point.
And
Having two teenagers, I think they often think that we have no idea what we're talking about. And it's probably because,
yeah,
you don't engage them with the story, right? Of like, this is
yeah,
when I've experienced this and this is what I learned from it. It's just like, oh, I'm just going to give you what I learned from it without the story. And they're just
right.
like, whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's, I think, part of what makes it special about actually speaking the story. Like you can write a story and that is beautiful and it's its own beautiful thing. But when we're communicating ideas and you don't have a story right alongside it, it's almost like, could this have been an email? There are other ways to communicate this, but when it exists within the context of life experience, where we get to really understand and see a little bit more of who we are as people, that's when I see, and a little bit with my own teenagers, it never works as well with my own teenagers as it does with other people's teenagers. But you see their eyes open a little bit and sparkle and consider like, I'm gonna maybe think about this a little bit more.
Well, we've talked a lot about fear, and one thing Rochelle and I talk about is one of the four no's of fear is negative self-talk and, our negative storytelling. And so when people are kind of stuck in that mode, do you have any tips or coaching
Mhm.
you share with them to try to help get them out of that and see more of the positive side?
Yeah, I think a lot of people get stuck in the self stories that we've been talking a little bit about. I categorize them as the four horsemen of the avoidance. They're like, instead of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, but they're hunting us down in the same way. And we've talked about a lot of them already: fear, judgment, imposter syndrome, and perfection. And each one of those rears its ugly head in a slightly different way. But it all comes down to, we've talked about this a little bit, but it really comes down to not recognizing that you are telling yourself a story, a particular story about what's happening. And if you can identify what that horseman is for you and what you tend to lean into, and what's holding you back, then you can start practicing a different story that you can tell yourself. For example, I had somebody tell me years ago that me being on social media all the time was just all about my ego and was very kind of selfish. And it was just like a punch in the gut. And really, I was like, oh my gosh, I was I was really upset about it. And that judgment story turned into those words turned into my own sort of self story about people's judgment about me and about the value of what I'm doing for other people. And is this really, like, it just really turned me into a lot of self doubt about what I was doing. And it's a really important part of my job is to show up on social media and to talk to people about everything. So um, I had to work really, really hard to turn that judgment story into something else, which turns out it was, people already don't like me. That, no, not people
No
already
matter
don't
what you
like
do,
me. Like, yeah,
no matter what
exactly.
you do.
Like,
Yep.
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. My goal is not to get everybody to like me. And that was a pretty radical shift from the way I grew up here in the good old Midwest. And so if we can, everybody's got a self story, that when that particular avoidance pops up for you, if you can identify what is the story I'm telling myself right now, and can find a reframe for yourself that's strong enough, that feels true enough, that doesn't feel like total mindset blah blah blah, but that really feels true enough that you're like, oh my gosh, this is something I can come back to, so that I can move through that and just take that next step, so that you can start to build the evidence, like we were talking about, Jeff, the evidence of you having done it successfully, quote unquote, even if that just means you survived, so you can do it again.
Yeah, what's interesting is by that person passing that judgment on you, in some way, shape, or form, you tapped into a fear that they had about themselves and they didn't like how that felt. And so they just went after you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it's really hard to see that in the moment. And now I look back and I have so much compassion actually for this person and their own struggles at the time, and how that was coming out at me. But you hear one thing, we all have these replays in our head of words and phrases people have said, stories we've heard, that we are telling ourselves. And if it's not helping you do this thing, in this context, if it's not helping you really share and speak a story that whoever it is you're talking to needs to hear, like, we've got to figure out how to eject that story and replace it with something that helps you move forward.
Yeah, great point. Do you have any tips on how to help people embrace their inner storyteller? As an engineer, I probably need lots of help embracing my inner storyteller. Or I did a few years ago. I think I'm better at it now, but any tips for people?
Yeah, I think a few things come to mind. And the first is that, um, really believing in sort of step one is believing that stories do exist, even in business. And there's a place for it, there's a need for it. So, in a meeting, a well-placed story can make a really big difference. In any presentation, a story can help. It can humanize you. It can humanize an idea. So that sort of starting place is really acknowledging that not all stories are contextually appropriate, but there is a role for stories to play, even in the most technical, the most businessy of businessy contexts. There's room for stories. So we have to start there.
It's needed. Because
It's
too much
needed.
businessy can get pretty boring pretty quick.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is stories are engaging, right? They're going to turn your boring, like technical things that you want people to care about. If you want people to care about it, then they need something personal or interesting, engaging to hold on to. So stories can just be a really helpful tool for you on that. And then the other thing is seeing yourself. If you really want to step into yourself as a storyteller more, then you've got to start seeing stories more. You've got to start looking for them and remembering them, writing them down. So I have a story log, and it's partly because my brain, I'm just like so full of all these different other things going on that it's really easy to lose the thread, or I think of a story and then it flies out the window. Or just as you are walking throughout your day, are you noticing what is impacting you? What is moving you? Those are stories. As you move throughout your day, if you can slow down and pay attention more, there might be a story that then you can tap into and use in the next moment where you're speaking or impacting people. But most of the time, a lot of what holds people back from doing storytelling is they're like, I don't have any interesting stories. Like, I don't really have anything to say. I'm like, well, what makes it interesting is less about the thing that happened and more about your perspective on it, the way that you saw that moment. And that is our role as leaders, is to help people see things a little differently. And so if we can lean into those moments that surprise you or delight you or move you in some way and remember them, and then think about how to take that story and then offer it up to the people that you're talking to, that's where the magic is. It's not about having the most dramatic story. It's not about, oh my gosh, I've lived this crazy life. I'm Tony Robbins and I have a giant hole that I dive into every day or whatever. That's a cool story and awesome. And he's probably can lean into that a ton. But us regular people going to the grocery store, there are stories that happen there if we notice them, if we can see them, if we can remember them and find the insights in those stories to offer up to our audience. So it's really a lot about slowing down, paying attention, and remembering those stories so that you can pass them on to other people.
Not to bring this full circle, right? But we got to slow down a little bit every once in a while.
Yeah.
And it's like the
Yeah.
idea of a joke book for a comedian, right? Like they carry around a joke book all the time.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
I think I'm gonna have to adopt that one, the storybook.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
It's for me, it's just on my notes app in my phone. And I can just press, voice memo on it or press go on it so that I don't even have to, spend time typing it out. Cause you just want the like memory to trigger for yourself when you're thinking about it, because it's really hard to think of stories in the moment of creation where you're like, okay, I gotta do a presentation on this and I need a story about this. Like, ugh. That is not when the stories are going to come to you.
No,
So we want to collect them all the way along.
when you're sitting down to write a LinkedIn post, it's not the time to think of the story.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. Time pressure, creativity does not often work under our own timeline. It's like, no, I don't feel like it today. Creativity gets burnt out sometimes too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
As you've experienced.
I know. Yep. Exactly.
Well, anything else you want to share before we jump into burning question for the day?
No, I mean, I would say, I feel like there's a really important concept with the storytelling that I haven't gotten to yet.
Okay.
So really quickly, if you are, let's say you've got a story and you're like, Sally, how do I tell a good story? Like how do I pull a story together and do it in a way that is persuasive and moving for my audience? I want to share with you really simple formula that will help you pull your story together. I call it MMM. It's very, very simple. It's moment, meaning, and move. So your MMM is that first M is moment, and all that is articulating the thing that moved you, like that moment that you were like, oh my gosh, this is what the story is about. Okay. And a good story brings us into a particular moment. It's not an overview, it's not kind of telling us about a thing, it brings us into a particular moment. So you're going to share that moment. Then the second M is meaning. And all that is you pulling the meaning out from that story for your audience. So as an example, let's say we go back to the person who just kind of gut punched me and with her remarks about me being selfish and online too much. Well, when I share that story, when I talk about that story, what I talk about is the meaning for that is that everybody is going to have an opinion about what you have to do. Right. So it's your commentary, it's your analysis, it's you articulating why why your audience will care about that. So it's you pulling that out. And it's you sharing your perspective and making sense of it for them. So you're just connecting those dots. It's your chance to shape meaning and understanding when you talk about that meaning piece. And then the third M is move. And all that means is you telling people what their next step is from there. So for me, it was, hey, people already don't like me, right? And maybe that's an insight that's helpful for you. People already have a point of view about you. And so if you can embrace that, it's going to help you as you keep moving forward. Okay, so very, very simple: moment, meaning, move. And if you can remember that formula, you can use it in any context. You can use it on social media. You could use it in your next pitch meeting. You can use it when you're talking to the board or leading a team meeting or wherever you find yourself when you're telling a story. If you can remember moment, meaning, move.
Okay. I like that. That's
There you
really easy.
Easy to remember. I like it.
Yeah. Yay.
And now it's time for burning questions.
All right. Well, our burning question today actually comes from Rochelle. I think she got a similar question to this, but I'm saying it's from Rochelle. So we
Okay.
talk a lot about how she's more on the creative side of things. She's a great storyteller, as is. I'm technical and fill the role in the construction industry of subject matter expert. And
Okay.
I think a lot of times people in Rochelle's role on the marketing or business development side of things are trying to convince the more technical people who are really
Yeah.
focused on how's this going to work and why is it going to work and why is that important, and
Mhm.
miss out on the storytelling piece. So
Mm.
how do you if you're dealing with somebody like that who really just does not get it, I'm sure Rochelle could add a million different times where she's been trying to tell somebody when they're working on a proposal response how important the storytelling is. And
Mm.
I've read a bunch of proposal responses where it's very obvious where there's a story and it's very obvious where there's not.
Yeah.
I don't know, how do we cross that bridge between the
Mm.
two types of people, one who really gets it and one who doesn't?
Yeah.
That was a really long.
Well, yeah, no. Essentially, I think what you're asking is how do you convince people who don't see themselves as storytellers or don't value the role of storytelling that they need to use stories? Is that right?
Yeah,
Yes,
Okay.
thanks. That was much
exactly.
more succinct.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, I mean, the science is pretty clear, right? So if I was talking to a technical person who's like, just give me the logistical information, please, I would point them to the really powerful science around persuasion and storytelling. So aside from the fact that it's incredibly brain friendly, and without story, your presentation is going to be more boring. People are going to be thinking about other things while you are sharing with them information that they could get in another way. They're going to care about you less as a human. Storytelling makes me care about you as a human being, right? Because I understand a little bit more about where you're at and what you're doing. And the brain is so attuned to storytelling, it lights up in several different places. It helps us empathize, it helps us remember our own experiences that are akin to the ones that you're hearing about. Um, and uh, and it helps us think in new ways that we hadn't thought of before. So you could point people to some of the actual brain science around it, but I think ultimately it's a question of, you know, do you want people to care about what it is that you're talking about? And if you want people to care about it and not just be impressed by it, not just take in the information, but to actually care about it and have an emotional connection. And PS, if you want them to buy, if you want them to become a client, you want them to have an emotional connection, then you've got to start playing with this art form a little bit. And you yourself have to open up to the emotional side of yourself. Not like you're going to become a, bawling extrovert as you're doing this. That's not what I'm saying, but it is truly allowing yourself to be a little more seen, which sounds really scary, I know, but that is a much faster pathway to someone feeling connected to you and wanting to work with you.
Yeah, I think
I
that
know.
emotional part is huge, because as an engineer, as an architect, a contractor, right? We are all very logical people, I think,
Yeah.
for the most part, and
Yeah.
do tend to defer to, being in our head a lot more than we are in our hearts. So,
Yeah. Well, I did my master's thesis on persuasion, and I studied Aristotle and his three appeals. And maybe you're familiar with this, but he talks about logos, which is your logical appeal, ethos, which is your ethical appeal, and pathos, which is your emotional appeal. And I studied all kinds of different speeches and the appeals that people used. And pathos is essential if you're going to persuade somebody. Like, you can't persuade without pathos. We like to think, and especially logical people like to think, that if my argument is as sound as possible, if it logically makes sense, that will do it. But honestly, logic alone is going to be way less effective than if you could team up logic and pathos, logos and pathos together. That is a powerful combination. We need each other, because pathos alone can be dangerous. We don't just want an emotional appeal, because that's where you can really get into manipulation. So they need each other. So I would just say, in the same way that we don't want pathos to be out there doing its thing without any check on it. The check on pathos is logic. And so we need your logical, we need your insights and the information and all of the right side of your brain coming in and making sure that everything is correct and accurate and true. Fantastic, thank you. But that in and of itself is going to be way less effective than if you can team up with some emotional appeal as well.
yeah, I think the connection, right, comes from the emotional appeal, and the logic then proves that you can do the job.
Exactly.
But I think
Exactly.
in this industry, we skip out completely on the emotional side of things. And
No. I think the marketer who
me.
has a good handle on this needing to be in there needs to be a partner to my logical technical staff. And then we'll have a really beautiful partnership.
Love it. Rochelle, that was funny. No. Sorry, Jeff.
I just have to stand up for my marketers.
Well, I'm
We're
curious.
over here talking about the story, and our engineers are like, no, that's fluff. I'm like, it's not fluff.
Well, that's a good
Well,
point,
maybe.
Michelle, too, because in project interviews, typically y'all don't come, right? So
Right.
so now you've got all the logical people in there. And I've sat in some that are oof. So how do you bring that into the interview side of things as well?
Yeah. Well, and if the concern is this is fluff, it's a fair concern. Nobody wants to waste anybody's time. And so, I think one of the fears is, oh my gosh, now I've got to be a storyteller and I've got to take all this time away from it. But really, there's a lot of different ways to think about what narrative really means and how it works. And it can be very short. We're talking 20 seconds, a story that can add a lot of color and interest and engagement to what it is that you're presenting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yay.
And ultimately, people, right, are going to want to work with the people who they like and connect with too.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah. Storytelling is just you being a human.
Yeah.
And that can be scary to think about. But if you just imagine and think about the leaders who you admire, who lead effectively and well, and who also bring people with them, because that's a leader, right? They're not just off on their own, but they're bringing people with them. My guess is they know how to speak, and they speak well. Doesn't mean that they are out on stages necessarily, but they know how to communicate their ideas, and they do it as a fully dimensional human being, right? They are a fully dimensional human being. They're not just saying the technical accurate information that needs to be conveyed. They're also helping us understand why that information matters and what it looks like for all of us as human beings. So
Yeah, very true. I think that's a great sentiment to end on. So
yay.
thanks for bantering with us today, Sally.
Thanks for having me. This was really fun. I feel like we went around the world. We talked about all kinds of different things, which is great. It was
We
really fun
covered
to be here.
so much. Our listeners are going to be so excited.
Cool. I love that.
It's usually where Rochelle and I go in a lot of different places.
I love it. That's a banter for you. That's a banter, right? A little back and forth. You don't know exactly where it's going to go. It was fun.
So a friendly reminder to our listeners, if you're having a burning question, you can email it to us at burnoutbanter@gmail.com. Please remember to like or subscribe to the podcast on Amazon, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to make sure you never miss an episode. Also, please keep an eye out for Sally's book if you're interested, Speaking Story, Using the Magic of Storytelling to Make Your Mark, Pitch Your Ideas, and Ignite Meaningful Changes, which comes out this month. You can also learn more about Sally and her business at bemoved.com. And if you're going to be at SMPS PRC in Portland, Oregon, or SMPS Circ in Greenville, South Carolina in March, please connect with Rochelle and I there. We are doing workshops at both conferences, so we'll be out on the road. Would love to connect with you.
Bringing the banter to you.
That's right.
Love it.
Our
Are you going to do a
favorite
live
part.
show? We should do a live show.
Ooh, we should talk to them about that next year. We're just doing
Oh,
workshops
Yeah.
on burnout and
Okay.
change management, but
love
a live
it.
show would be amazing.
Yeah. Jeff, are you doing your talk?
No, not yet. This is
Okay. All
yeah,
right.
I'm working on it.
All right.
Sally's
Keep
helping.
grinding.
Sally's helping me with my own stepping into my own spotlight. So
Oh, good.
Mhm.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to get Jeff out on stage this year. What do you think, Jeff?
I would like that as well.
Yeah.
That's my goal.
All right.
Great. I'll support the heck out of this.
I
Share it
got you.
everywhere.
I see you, Jeff. Coming for you.
All right. Well, we'll see everybody next month. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.